Our fourth presenter will be Bill Oliva, who is Chief of Structures Development Section at the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Bill currently serves as the chair of the Midwest Regional Bridge Preservation Partnership. Bill will provide some insight into the impact on DOT bridge inspections and bridge preservation at Wisconsin DOT.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the organizers for putting this together. Again, I'm Bill Oliva with Wisconsin Department of Transportation Bureau of Structures, and we'll share a little bit of how we've addressed the COVID issues and crisis within our department. The first thing I want to touch on are budget issues. Within Wisconsin, appropriation targets were developed by our Secretary's office and are based on a number of factors with a number of goals in mind. We wanted to minimize the impact to existing infrastructure projects, our LET program and such, ensuring that investment continues to improve the transportation system and economy. So we wanted to make sure that our current program was stable and well-staffed and well-funded moving forward. We also, as a party, wanted to minimize or have no impacts on the local program. And they are primarily federally funded. Our local bridge program is typically an 80-20 federal match. So we wanted to keep that stable and moving forward for our local partners within Wisconsin, as well as no impact to local aid programs that are mandatory, statutorily mandatory in Wisconsin. Appropriation targets, again, set by the Secretary's office in Wisconsin. We wanted to align our expenditures with our revenues. So that revenue stream is changing. We have got current commitments, but we also have a proposed LET program for a number of years, 6 years coming. So we wanted to make sure that our plans and what we had anticipated, or we had options open for funding of that LET program. Also, a critical emphasis area and priority to our department was not to have layoffs or furloughs of our staff. I know some of the DOTs have examined reduced schedules and some level of furloughs, but in Wisconsin, our secretary wanted to, as much as possible, have a stable workforce within again, investments aimed at our core functions, delivering our LET program, ensuring operational capacity in Wisconsin roads and things of that nature. Other budget issues. For our operating budget, we had targeted reductions in our fiscal 21 across the board, whether it is, internal investments in infrastructure, software, equipment, our consultant budget to some extent, and other areas were addressed by targeted reductions to address that changed funding stream. That funding stream and future budget revenues, we recognize as, taking a hit. Our gas tax is a percentage base index, and we have seen 10 to 13% lower traffic volumes compared to last year. So with that lower traffic volumes are lower fuel usage and revenues from fuel usage. So that gave us an idea of what to anticipate for reductions going forward. Also, staff vacancies. Currently we have a highly reduced hiring in the department, as well as a pretty significant attrition rate within our department. So, we're floating somewhere between 8 and 10% vacancies in our department currently. And within our division that delivers our LET program, does our maintenance work and things of that nature, we've got about 105 vacant positions, and it's growing daily. We do have kind of a older workforce within our department, so we anticipate that vacancy rate most certainly getting up to 10% and beyond before we potentially begin a larger effort to refill positions. Other budget issues, our backbone program has been pretty steady. We did some rebalancing before the COVID as far as LET dollars over time. And as we fill progressively more years with our planning and project initiation, we're filling them at historic levels, and whether we'll be able to maintain that is, a wild card. We haven't had any direct reductions in structure budgets, no mandate to reduce spending on bridges, in particular. And within our maintenance spending, and we do most of our maintenance spending using county workers, local county agencies to do the work for us. Not a big reduction there, only a 0.5% decrease in that funding. And that would typically be some of the work around streams, maybe thin polymer overlays, some of the repair work due to hits on bridges, things of that nature. So not a big reduction at this time, but that's all subject to future revenue streams. And a lot of that could be funded with state dollars. Our inspection program, on that front, we had a culmination of a couple of things. Certainly the reduction in staff availability, potentially, but also we initiated a 48-month risk-based inspection policy that we worked with Federal Highways on, which moved some of our inspections to that 48-month window, which reduced the number of inspections within a given time frame that we had to do. And that allowed us to focus in on, critical inspections or fewer bridges for that inspection cycle. Again, that really does help us prioritize and dedicate our resources to the higher priorities a little bit better. As far as the inspection program itself, we've, for the most part, have continued as close to normal as possible. We've made some adjustments to, staff operations and protocols out in the field. Snooper-based inspections, the time that it takes to do those inspections on bridges has increased. Normally, as with, most of the DOTs, we'd have two people in the basket, one operating, one doing the inspection. So when you're, put in the position of having to social distance or physically distance, that's brought us down to one person in that basket. Which makes the individual inspections less efficient time-wise. And based off of some feedback we had from our maintenance section, it looks like it adds about somewhere between 15 to 25% more time to each individual bridge inspection. So that's a good number for planning purposes. For teleworking staff, each of the states, and I think Seth referred to the Connecticut plan. We have a state bounce back plan. Phase one, which we entered immediately back in the spring, or near immediately. Buildings were partially opened, only for most critical staff. Front door service type. In July, we entered a phase two where buildings were fully open, for public paced government services. But remote work was highly encouraged still. Not a lot of our staff was returning back. We're still in that phase two. Later in time, and that may most likely be after the turn of the year in 2021, we may be in a position, depending on where we're at with COVID, of fully returning to normal work locations. But there's no commitment on a timeline there, and it really will be based off of what's physically going on in Wisconsin and the direction that we get from the governor and the secretary's office on that. July 13th, we began that phase two, and still 75% of our workforce, at least, and most likely more in some instances, depending on the business area, is still teleworking. 25% are authorized to be back in the office, but that's not mandated. That's based off of the ability to distance and critical work needs to be in the office. What's really important and interesting is recently we did a very informal survey within our bridge office area on what's going on with telework. And this is some interesting information to note, and I'll kind of go through it a little bit slowly. So in the survey question, a situation similar to our current status with COVID, if you were allowed unrestricted access to go back to work, how often would you be in the office? So given a choice to go back, given the COVID, what we see here are of the sample of our bridge office staff, and, we're talking about a 60-person sample here. Clearly, 75% or more are not interested in going into the office at this time and would prefer to be in telework status. And, close to 85, 90% at most would want to be in there, 1 day a week or less. So that's pretty telling and reinforces where we're at with our plan. But as all of us, whether DOT agencies, local agencies, or even our private sector partners, this has really been kind of a test bed for technology, networking, getting the work done purely electronically. So the next question that we asked our staff of interest is, assuming in the future, for fully normal conditions, no COVID, considerations at that time, how often would you prefer to work in the office? And this is kind of telling of where we're at and where we may be going as an industry or, a culture or society. So we've got a third of our staff who would still prefer to telework, in the future without, COVID concerns. And then almost 3/4 of our staff would be comfortable being in a telework situation and only in the office 2 days per week or less. So, as we go forward, this a little bit speaks to our ability to work remotely and get the job done and deliver our programs and still do our inspection and preservation work. So, as an industry, I hope we're kind of looking at this beyond COVID and what does this period mean as far as lessons learned going forward? We heard some talk earlier, I think it was from Tom, about reducing real estate or footprint, things of that nature. But I think this really speaks to a paradigm shift in where we may be at in a year or 5 years as far as how we do work. So that's pretty much what I had to share today.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.